Welcome back to the APSCC 2021 webinar series. I'm Christopher Slaughter, your MC for the series, and we're delighted today to have you join us for our session on Earth observation, the market and technology requirements for the Asia-Pacific region. Very, very happy to have Lynette Tan, the CEO of the Singapore Space and Technology Limited, SSTL. She'll be moderating this discussion today. Joining her for the conversation will be Madhav Ragam from Maxar, Yasu Yamazaki from Axel Space, and Prateep Basu from SatSure. Take it away, Lynette.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have a good panel of panelists here and really excited to be sharing about the Earth observation market in Asia Pacific with all of you. Thank you to APSCC for inviting all of us here and arranging these regular webinars for people to learn and for people to share and learn, and network as well in this COVID-19 era, I would say. I'm going to just jump straight to it because I think we have a lot to hear from our experienced and distinguished panelists here. And I'm going to just jump straight into Madhav here. You joined Maxar a year ago, almost a year ago, from a different sector, from a different industry. I was wondering if you could share more about, the motivation or why you are coming into this Earth observation market. What are some of the new things you're trying to push through in Maxar, and to be very ambitious and to crash more questions into one statement, because Maxar is not a company from Asia Pacific, and I was hoping you could share some key differences in the EO market from your perspective, vis-a-vis Canada and in the US, and how these are different from the Asia Pacific market. Over to you, Madhav.
Thank you, Lynette. And thank you for everybody's participation today. And I'm delighted to be here. To answer your question, Lynette, what made me move from a different industry into the space technology industry? A little known secret about me is that I started my career many years ago developing a GIS system from scratch for a government agency in India. Right? That was before I moved to Singapore, also to focus on geographical information systems. That was the part that attracted Maxar towards me, I think, because since then I had broadened my focus to cover all of the areas that Maxar is focused on, which is defense and intelligence, civil government, and into some of the commercial areas as well, like transportation in particular, where we are heavily focused on. So I think it was that blend that got us talking of starting my career with GIS and broadening myself across all of the government, various verticals within government and outside in the commercial areas as well. And plus my experience working with IBM across the Asia Pacific countries. And also for a short while, I did a stint covering the whole globe as the government solutions leader for IBM, and also focused heavily on the growth markets, which included Latin America, Middle East and Africa, as well as Central and Eastern Europe. So I think that blend of experience, what really got us talking. And in terms of personally, what excited me with Maxar was the plethora of use cases that suddenly get opened up with our impending launch of the Legion constellation of satellites, right? So I could actually see where we could actually use the space technology for a better world in that sense, right? For improving life on Earth in every dimension. So that really, kind of was the draw factor for me, right? And I'm really delighted. And after 1 year, I can say that I made the right decision. I'm still very excited and delighted, and that shows in various aspects of how I lead the business and the team, right? So with that, let me move into your second part of the question, which is about EO market in Asia Pacific compared to the other markets around the world. I think just in terms of the size, right? It's no surprise to anybody. North America, is the highest, share of the EO market, right? But I don't know how many people know that EO market in Asia Pacific is the fastest growing though, right? And the question obviously comes back to why, right? What is fueling the growth, right? And this is what I was kind of doing my research on before I finally decided to accept the Maxar offer, right? So first of all, again, it's no surprise to all of us who live in Asia that there is significant spend on infrastructure build, right? Whether you look at it from a China Belt and Road Initiative, right? Whether you look at it from the standpoint of Indonesia building a new capital in the Kalimantan area, India with its focus on infrastructure development to catch up with where China is, even though China is a couple of decades ahead maybe, right? In terms of roads, highways, smart cities, and all of that. And now, you can actually see, given what we have learned with the COVID pandemic, if we thought that the COVID pandemic was worse, the climate change challenges that we're going to be faced with is going to be N times more impactful than what we had just been through and still going through COVID pandemic, right? So all of these, are contributing factors to the newfound interest in EO, right? A rejuvenation of, depleting green cover, for example, right? Forestry, agriculture applications, all of these are, really kind of, accelerating in terms of the adoption of EO, in Asia itself, right? The second dimension to what's fueling the growth is the geopolitical tensions in the region, right? This geopolitical tensions, kind of show up in the form of monitoring needs to monitor physical and even virtual borders, right? Across both land and water. Now, all of us know that a picture is worth more than 1,000 words, right? And as in these pictures are used as a means to dispel the myths and also some of the political rhetoric at times that you see between the various countries that are involved, right? And monitoring requirements over water are becoming even more sophisticated, right? Because countries are looking for solutions that actually make effective use of one side, the vessel detection services using AIS and SAR imagery, for example, and tipping and queuing towards collecting the EO images where and when relevant only, right? So it's a really hotbed of activity, given our extra special region that we live in Southeast Asia, and it's really interesting, exciting, maybe a little bit scary at times, but nevertheless, definitely interesting for sure. Now, one challenge that EO has, and the biggest enemy that Earth observation has, is clouds, right? And that's a problem that we can't get over so easily, right? Especially when you're looking at it from an optical imagery standpoint, that's a challenge. And what's also peculiar for us in living in the tropics is that clouds tend to form by late morning, right? And surprise, surprise, that kind of coincides with when the satellites pass, the satellites that are following the sun synchronous orbit, right? So that's a problem because on most days when the satellites are above, you're not able to collect, right? So, what are we doing, right? Obviously we can't, just leave that be, right? So with our Legion constellation of satellites, we're actually going to be launching the Mid-Incline orbit satellites, right? That will now allow us to capture anywhere between 6 to 15 times, any particular portion of the Earth, right? So that means now I can avoid the clouds by taking, early morning, image shoots, right? And late evening as well, once the clouds, disperse. So it gives us a lot more opportunities to actually capture real scenery on the ground that can help us to do a better job at monitoring these land-based and water-based assets. I think what we're going to see in the future is that the use of the satellite-based EO solutions will significantly increase even more as the revisit rates, as the resolution and the accuracy rates improve rapidly as well, right? So I think, really, I can't think about very many parts of our life that can't be touched anymore by the use of satellite imagery. Right? So I'm going to stop there and see if you've got any follow-ups.
Yeah, I took some notes here, so you would see me typing a little bit to follow up later. But let's move on to Prateep. Right, he's from SetShare, and they have operations in Bangalore, Switzerland, London, and Sydney, so also very international. But before we start, Prateep, you could let us know which country you're in, and then also perhaps from your expertise in these 4 regions you operate. Could you share a little bit more, very specific about India and Australia, Sydney, where you also have operations in? What kind of EO requirements are unique to the Indian and to the Australian market? Yeah, Prateep, over to you.
Yes. Well, thanks, Lynette, for that kind introduction. I'm joining in from Bangalore for your information in India, and it's a very interesting phase for Earth observation industry in India specifically. Just a couple of days back, a very landmark reformation of geospatial mapping and data policy was passed. With a lot of fanfare, the government has essentially deregularized all kind of geospatial data sets, and it essentially builds up from the industry-wide demand for insights, information services derived from EO data. What we have seen at SatShare, we are a young company. It's been 4 years for us. What we have seen at SatShare is that the non-traditional sectors in India, like non-traditional EO sectors, I would say, like banks, insurance companies, FMCG sector, they are the ones who are suddenly seeing the potential for data coming from space to give them strategic advantage and operational agility. Meaning that if you are able to cover this huge masses of land at a very high frequency, and you can generate insights, analytics on it, on what changes are happening, it gives them unprecedented advantage, especially in a country which is as vast as India, and with so many people, obviously. So the traditional EO demand globally has been in the government military sector. What India is driving through its huge consumer market are new avenues for Earth observation data and applications of it. So this is something which is very unique from what we see in other geographies, and I believe the same trend also is going to pick up in the Southeast Asian region, even though it's a bit early for that. Now, the second thing which is very typical of Earth observation data usage in India is the amount of efforts that all organizations, public and private, are putting in adapting to climate change. And the use of space technology is very, very, very important there, especially Earth observation. So the overall education of the user base of Earth observation has also increased today very rapidly, at par with European and American regions, and that is something which is I would say a commonality between the Indian Indian geography demand and the Australian side demand. So you mentioned Australia as well, because a lot of the applications of Earth observation is being driven by the need to utilize such tools for de-risking the business operations from climate related disasters like the wildfires we saw last year in Australia. The droughts, the frequency of droughts we are seeing. How do you you can't reverse climate change, but you need to adapt to it. So it's interesting times. I would say the application sector of EO is finally being unlocked due to the convergence of many different things happening. Obviously, the supply of good data, the availability of data from space is a very important factor, and we are very optimistic about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Prateep. Yeah, I thought it was interesting about your comments about the Indian market, and I really appreciate you sharing your insights with us. So moving on now to Yasu, who is dialing in from Japan. That's, this is the wonders of Zoom technology. Everyone's coming in from a different place. Yasu, he lived in Singapore for a few years, and we have met quite often when he was living here. But he's also very experienced and has joined various high-tech companies, and now he's with Exospace. I was going to, ask you, Yasu, about Exospace, right? In particular, what is Exospace offering in the EO capabilities? And how is that keeping up with some of the market trends? And in particular, noting that perhaps your dominant market is in Japan, could you, share some of the anecdotes and experience in dealing in the Japanese market for EO, and also in your experiences overseas in the Asia Pacific region?
Thank you, Lynette, and hi everyone. Very happy to be part of this panel. So I have been in this industry for, let's say, 7-8 years now. And now I'm the Chief Business Officer of Exospace, driving our business in Japan as well as in the global market. So yes, we are a Japanese company, and yes, Japan is a very important market. But for us, we play in the not only in the Japan market, but also in the global market beyond Asia. Sharing you about the uniqueness of Japanese market, I would say that this is not specific for EO business, but for business in general. As you may know, it's a very, very conservative and careful market. So before they try anything new, they want to know if it works. Now, this is a very strange situation, because in order for a new, proposition to be used, there needs to be opportunity. But because it's a conservative, careful market, no one is willing to be the first penguin. So one of the challenges for us doing business is to overcome that conservativeness and unwillingness to take the risk of using a new technology. Now, our focus in the EO business is to do business. So as one of the panelists mentioned, traditionally, actually both of them mentioned that traditionally it's been the government usage, predominantly a government usage. But for us, we're seeking to bring clarity for business usage, and so I would say that our approach is mostly in the education space, meaning we're educating our clients who have never been exposed to using satellite imagery data, and see if the data fits into their business decision-making process. So I would like to share that Japan is one, very, very conservative, second, risk averse. So in order for us to have a position here, we need to educate, and educate. I would like to stop here.
Great. I think it is an interesting anecdote you shared, because if you want track record, but you need to start and try first, right, to establish a track record. So it can be caught in a chicken and egg situation. I'm going to open up some questions for some of you here. On one hand, Madav did say that the Asia Pacific EO market is one of the fastest growing. Coincidentally, I was just on a call with Yasu before this, and we were talking about whether EO is a saturated market or is it reaching saturation soon. What are your views about it? Do you think that because it's fast growing, we're going to see more EO companies coming up from Asia Pacific? Or do you think actually it's going to plateau and everyone's just going to work with whoever has a track record and whoever has a convincing case to do that? I'm just going to circle back and start with Madav, if you don't mind, to answer this question.
Sure. Now, I think, traditionally, as all of us have been saying, EO has been the backbone of government agencies, right? With private playing an important role in developing services, right? But on a regional level, right, spacefaring nations like India, right, and this is what Prateek was just talking about, right? The announcement that they made about the geospatial data policy guideline the earlier part of this week, right, is very, very exciting, and is following on the heels of what the US has done, Europe has done, China has done, and of course Singapore has always been ahead of its times in making sure that the private sector gets to enjoy the benefits of the government's investments in this area. So I think we're going to start to see the concerted efforts of governments in Singapore, India, China, Japan, all of them bearing fruit, and we should start to see Asia Pacific becoming a hotbed of activity for EO companies. May not all be in the launching and managing and operations of the satellite, but I think even if they are focused on taking advantage of providing applications and insights, I think there's significant value to be brought about there, right? Let me give you an example of why I say that. When we launched the Legion satellites, right, we're going to have 6 of them, right, orbiting the Earth, right, sometime towards the end of this year or early next year. There's 6 of them, and they're going to be sending, so much of imagery, right, just any location on the Earth, anywhere from 6 to 15 times a day. We ask ourselves the question, how many of the end user organizations, whether they're government or whether they're private sector, who can truly benefit from the insights that are obtained by EO, have the capability to harness and leverage the insights that can be gleaned from all those inputs that they're getting, right? So I think there's significant opportunity there for private sector participation in accelerating the adoption rate of the EO in the marketplace.
Great, thank you. Yasu or Prateek, do you want to comment on that? Are we going to see more EO companies? It's fast growing. Is it going to reach saturation soon? And what do you think is going to be the growth appetite for this part of the world?
Go ahead, Prateek.
Well, thanks, Yasu. I guess the appetite in this part of the world would be very differentiated applications. Sometimes I would say even customized applications. So you would see both services as well as product companies using EO data, thriving in in these regions. The problems are quite unique in Asia Pacific, in agriculture context, for example, small farm holdings, frequency of disasters, etc. And it does seem like a combination of optical and SAR is like a very important capability to have while creating such solutions, since the cloud cover issue is very prominent in this region. And these are some of the trends that we should look into. I don't see too many satellites going up, like people becoming satellite operator from this region. Maybe Japan, the space industry is moving there, but definitely a lot on the software side, Lynette.
Thanks. Over to you, Yasu.
Sure. Well, so we design, operate, and design, build, and operate a satellite, and also use the data to provide insights. I hope there will be more and more people trying, what we're doing, because I don't think there's enough data out there to further grow this industry. When we attend amazing conference like GSTC, we get into this illusion that maybe there's too many EO players. However, I wear this Axel Space t-shirt, not because of this panel today, but I wear this every day, and I walk around and try to figure out whether they know us. Nobody knows us, right? When I go to GSTC, yes, people know us. When I go to IIC, yes, they know us. But the general public doesn't know us. So from that perspective, EO business or the space technology business is still in a very, very baby stage. That's one. Second, whatever we're doing, all of us, it's a very difficult, project, very difficult mission. So is it saturated? No way it's saturated. Is it gonna grow fast? I hope so. How soon are we gonna reach the plateau? I don't see that we're gonna be reaching the plateau anytime soon, because it's a really, really difficult market, which is also a good thing, because whoever is managing to be in this market can enjoy that first mover advantage. So that's my view.
And I think also because it's a difficult market to be in, there's a natural barrier of entry. And also because the cost involved in designing, building, operating a satellite is not a cheap ticket. So I think therein lies a natural barrier, but also comes with a set of challenges, like you pointed out, in that it is a very hard industry. And so it comes with good and bad. And I do hear the general sentiment being that there are still many opportunities. So in that case, circling back to Madhav, what do you think could be the greatest disruption? Something that Maxa or you would bet on in the next 2 to 3 years. And it doesn't have to be satellite related, right? Disruption tends to come also from outside. What would you be betting on?
Yeah, so I think as we see many government and organizations and enterprises looking at EO as an essential tool to help them in their respective business areas, we've seen already, and we're seeing a further acceleration of the use of AI in the satellite imagery area, right? As this is the latest commercial trend that you see. And why is that so? Because, as I said before, as the amount of data that's available to these organizations increases exponentially, their ability to just use the human expertise to be able to recognize features on the images and to be able to convert them into vector and all of that stuff is going to be limited. And even if it is, one thing is the limitation, the second part of it is the speed to market. How can I quickly, as soon as I take images, can I quickly process it into vector as change detection vectors and then put it into my GIS systems, etc., is going to be crucial in this. And we're going to be investing pretty rapidly in this area as we look ahead. We're already seeing significant take-up in our projects where we actually tend to do services. Most of our AI stuff is done initially as services before they get productized into specific offerings that is available for even customers who don't tend to take our services with it, right? So I think you'll see quite a bit that comes through into our standard offerings like Secure Watch. For example, just the change detection piece of it, right, just becomes an additional layer within our Secure Watch capability, which already harnesses the AI and ML capability, but the users don't need to know, right? And that's the beauty of it. As you want this technology to proliferate across the enterprise and go into the line of business users being able to use as well, we're going to take the jargon away from them and make it appear as if it's just a point and shoot kind of a thing, right? So that's where we're headed towards, and you will see a lot more offerings that showcase this capability.
Prateep, thanks a lot, Madhav. I like the part about AI, and I think we do hear about the things that it could do. And also to back to Yasu's point earlier, right? He spoke about how actually there are not enough data coming out from EO, and using AI actually does rely on certain data sets. So I'm going to do a bit of shameless plug here. In SSTL, we run an accelerate program, and two of the companies in our portfolio, Meta Sensing and Bifrost, they've seen that gap in that AI could be well deployed, and then there's perhaps insufficient data sets, for calibration and for tagging. So Meta Sensing develops SAR, synthetic aperture radar images, and Bifrost provides EO images to assist satellite companies such as Maxar and Exospace. And actually, they're already talking to Maxar in the US to train the AI to use some of these data sets, because we just don't have enough original data. So simulated data might be a solution, to this gap that we're hearing from this panel. So that's really great to hear what you've said. Going on to Prateep, right? I think, I'm just going to, because you did say you're from a young company, perhaps you consider yourself a mature startup. And I guess that's what you're betting on, right? Your company, SetSure, to be the greatest disruption that you will see in the coming years. What do you think, Prateep?
Well, I wish, I hope that we are the greatest disruption in the EO industry.
Me
But
too. That's not enough money, literally.
naturally, right. So, from my point of view, I think definitely I agree with Madhav. AI is a huge disruption, but there is a barrier to AI, and that is the amount of training data it requires to actually build reliable and predictable models. So the issues on that cannot be solved by Earth observation industry, unfortunately. It has to be more of a business model innovation to aggregate more and more training data sets. I think Maxar is doing some great job on that, by the way. Another aspect I think we need to definitely look into, and it's very far in the future. So we are speaking of AI, which is the immediate future. A bit more long term is quantum technologies. With the amount of data that we are generating from space, and it's increasing, continuously increasing, you will reach a point when your deep neural networks to analyze such huge amount of data will take so much of compute that it will be economically unfeasible. And that is where quantum computing could be a very big game changer for the Earth observation industry, and it's progressing very fast, especially led by the big tech, Google, Microsoft, IBM, and all. And we need to keep a lookout for this. I mean, even European Space Agency has now recently started a quantum research lab for Earth observation applications. So we know that this is something to look out for. So I'll just stop here. Quantum is in itself a very big topic. Maybe Yasu could provide his 2 cents.
Go ahead, Yasu. Quantum. Or what would you bet on?
Wow. Very difficult after all these intelligent comments. So I guess from our perspective, we like the word creation rather than disruption. So we don't want to destroy or disrupt, but we want to create something new. And so we're always focused on creation. And second thing that we're always focused on is we're an engineering company, but rather than focusing on developing new engineering or technology, we want to create a new solution that makes the consumer, the market, happy. And so I think the next big leap that we can see in our industry will really come from, not from the technology, but from the business innovation, business transformation, finding that hidden secret on monetizing, capitalizing from our technology. And one of my inspiration is actually this. Oops.
Oh, yeah.
iPhone. Okay. So every morning I wake up and I cannot resist the temptation to grab this. And what do I do? I check the weather, I check the news, and so forth. So I check information on my iPhone. Now, what we are selling essentially is information to make decision. if we are able to become part of this, we feel our opportunity is exponential. Just like I check the weather, I check the news, and I check the emails and chat and so forth. I want to find a way to be part of that reaction, a spontaneous, intuitive reaction that everybody does every morning. Then there must be a huge business opportunity waiting. So that's my thoughts.
So the creation would come in the business model in new business opportunities and new markets that the EO and the satellite industry could penetrate into. I think that's really good, right? If we were all in such a accessible industry, that would be really awesome, I think. Cool. I actually thanks a lot, Yasu. I wanted to go back to Medev on the comment you made about the Legion satellite, and this is I didn't send it to you earlier, but this is something I wanted to ask because I'm now curious. You talked about the revisit rate of the Legion satellite, 6 to 15 times, and then there's also resolution, right? Do you think revisit rates versus resolution, which is the one that's going to grow faster and that's going to make a difference in perhaps opening up new business opportunities that Yasu mentioned? Like, is it, better resolution or actually more and more revisit rate? And which one has a greater weightage?
Yeah, so I think, you're asking Maxar that question. So the question would be, it'll be answered in a certain way, right? We are not newcomers to resolution, right? We've always had the best in class resolution, and we've been using 30 centimeters for a while now, right? So all 6 Legion satellites would be having 30 centimeter capability, right? Now, so the latest and the greatest in that is that the revisit rate is going up significantly, right? So we think it's the combination of additional 30 centimeter capacity that we would have, especially in our part of the world where we are constrained, right? Because we're completely sold out, right? Some people may not believe it, but we're completely sold out in certain geographies. And so additional capacity plus the revisit rates, right, is going to give rise to significant number of use cases that could be fueled through EO, which we couldn't even think of before.
So then would the investment in the immediate future be using the same Legion satellite but trying to enhance the revisit rates, or would it be developing better resolution satellites and then keeping the same 15 times is a lot?
Yeah, so I think we probably would be assuming that all the governments are okay to get the resolution down, right? But I think that's where the challenge lies.
Yeah, that's right. We have like a little bit of time left, and I want to ask this question that hopefully in a few years' time no one can ask, which COVID, right? Do you find that it has opened up new business opportunities, or actually because of the COVID restrictions and lockdown and lack of traveling for companies, it's actually going to be a bit harder? I'm going to just start with backwards to Yasu. How has Exospace coped with COVID, and is it doing, how is it managing with this COVID climate? Yasu, please.
Sure. So, by the way, I cannot resist the temptation to share this. I just came back from Fukuoka, southern part of Japan, to attend a physical conference for a week. So this is crazy, right?
Yeah, I refuse to reply to your email when you say.
I know. Everyone's jealous.
Yeah.
And so we've been preaching that digital communication works. I would have to say that physical communication, physical interaction really makes a difference.
Right.
So I just wanted to say this. So having said that, how has the COVID-19 impacted Axospace from a business perspective and from an operational perspective? So let's go from the operational perspective easier. So we have shut down our office very early on, even before the government made us, or forced us to shut the office down to be safe, and also to make sure that none of our employees be impacted. So that was, safety first. So why were we able to do that? I think because not because we were preparing for COVID, but because we always continue to seek efficiency in our operation. We have luckily transformed many of our operation in digital ways. So many of our designing and manufacturing, we are able to do it remotely. Of course, we cannot assemble remotely, but many of our testing and so forth, we can do remotely already. So we were able to do it without disruption. In fact, proving that point, I'm very happy to share that we are launching 4 satellites next month.
Wow.
So this hopefully proves that we were the impact from the operational perspective was minimal for Axospace. From a business perspective, we feel this has created a huge opportunity, because we are not only in the Earth observation business, but we are also in the remote sensing business. Remote sensing is by nature naturally fitting to the situation we have right now. For example, we talk to infrastructure development companies in Japan and some parts in the Southern America. They develop large infrastructures, and normally they would go visit and check what's going on. They cannot because of the current situation. They now use our data to remotely check the development, the changes that are happening, and making sure that it is being developed. And this is only being able to do with the satellite imagery technology. And this is just one example, but I think the remote sensing business is enjoying the current situation, and it's actually going to be continuing to see interest even in a conservative market like Japan.
Yeah, and because then now it creates, unfortunately, a need to test new technologies out in remote sensing, and then that creates, therefore, your case study, for even conservative markets. That's good to hear.
Exactly. They have no choice. They cannot fly.
That's right. Yeah, that's right, Yasu. And I think also that might be the case in India too, right, Prateep? In remote sensing opportunities, trying to minimize mingling of people, and therefore, more demands for EO images.
Yeah, Indians are very fast to adapt. I mean, honestly, when COVID lockdowns happened, given the indiscipline we have in India amongst us, I never thought we could actually, be all locked up in homes. But thankfully, we are fast with technology, so all these tools like Zoom, etc., came in, and any kind of asset monitoring, roads, crops, everything, it became so difficult. So the demand spiked up for remote sensing. Let me tell you, not necessarily just from an upstream satellite point of view, and the shift that we see is what was good to have before has become must have now, right? And that's very very interesting, because earlier we people saw remote sensing as something which is an addendum. Now it's a core part of the digital transformation efforts. And this mainstream of this going of mainstream of remote sensing application is going to open up a lot of latent potential in the market, like Yasu was mentioning previously, which is untapped. And definitely COVID has played a part in it.
Oh, thanks, Prateep. I think also you're in an interesting situation in India, and also very well placed. I think, to use remote sensing and EO to allow things to be as normal as it can for government and for the key clients in India. That's good to hear. How about Madev? For Maxar Technologies, it's a really big company. It's almost $500 million in revenue. How has that COVID-19 pandemic challenged the business or opened up opportunities for Maxar?
I think for us, as you can tell, governments is where we do a lot of the work, even though commercial is where the accelerated growth is happening. So on the government side, we are actually starting, especially in the Asia-Pacific context, we've started to see a lot of projects sliding to the right because of the changed priorities for the government, and also the need to fund the COVID vaccine kitty. So we've seen some delays in the projects, but they will still happen when they come around to it, because governments have also been challenged to operate remotely, and some of them in the developing countries just didn't have the capability to move the files, in a remote working manner, as you can imagine. That's one part of the story. But on the other side, I kind of agree with what Yasu and Prateep are saying. That's exactly what we are seeing on the commercial side of things now, right? Whether it is from a monitoring standpoint, that they are unable to send the crew out into the field as frequently as before, and they have to rely on the EO imagery to be able to look at things and stay up to date on what is the progress being made in the field, right? So I think two sides to the coin there.
Okay, I think we're hitting the 1 hour mark. So thank you, APSCC. For sure, it's a real pleasure to be here with Madev, Prateep, and Yasu. And hopefully we can meet soon.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lynette. Thank you very much, Madhav. Thank you, Yasu, and thank you, Prateep, for your participation in today's session. Really some excellent insights into the EO market and what's going on in that particular space. Join us next week for the first in what we are planning to have as a series of Asian operator sessions. This will be the first one that we will be having next Tuesday. So please do join us. Make a point to tune in and see what's going on. And also, please let your friends and colleagues know. The registration, of course, is free, as always. If you go to apsccsat.com, you will find the registration page there, free of charge, as you already know. And you can invite anyone in the industry who might have interest in the series to please join us. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you next week.